Right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bobby, and I'm the sales manager for the FLAsia, and of course, for your host today. Very warm welcome to the FLAsia 2022 first virtual roadshows. So during the session itself, if you have any questions for the speakers, or if you face any technical issues, please type it in the chat box, and our team will attend to you shortly. So right now, without further ado, let's welcome Darren, our project lead for FLAsia, to say a few words to kickstart the roadshow. Darren, please.
Thank you, Bobby. And good afternoon, everyone. And a huge thank you for you to join us today for this session that is jointly organized by Constella Exhibitions and the Franchising and Licensing Association, FLA Singapore. In today's session, Franchising Outlook and Opportunities in Singapore, our panel of experts will address Singapore's economic performance, legal issues, and the reason why Singapore continues to be a desirable market for franchisors to expand their operations here. Singapore's GDP is predicted to increase by 3 to 5% in 2022, and in 2023, an additional growth of 3% is anticipated. Consumer-facing sectors, such as retail trade and F&B services, are projected to see a gradual recovery over the course of the year as domestic restrictions are progressively eased. Consumer sentiments have also improved amidst the turnaround in labor market conditions. The franchise industry has seen significant and rapid change over the past 2 years because of the global pandemic. Many entrepreneurs and business owners have identified competitiveness and worker resilience as being crucial to the enterprise. We are pleased to share that we are returning in person, first time ever since the pandemic, at the Marina Bay Sands, Singapore for the 17th edition of the Franchising and Licensing Asia physical exhibition that is happening on 27 to 29 October 2022. The theme for this year is Franchise Reset, Seizing New Franchise Opportunities in Asia Pacific. We aim to connect franchising and licensing community through the creation of new franchise possibilities. We are expecting a total of 8,000 attendees regionally. There will be sharing of reference case studies, open learning sessions, and industry roundtables that encourages discussions between key industry stakeholders. Please visit our website for more information. Lastly, please enjoy this session, and we look forward to welcoming you in person at the FLAsia 2022 in October. Thank you, and over back to you, Bobby.
Right. Thank you, Darren. Okay, for the next session, please join me in welcoming our moderator for the panel discussion, Ms. Sian Naidu. Sian is the founder and CEO of Extreme Consulting, and she has been integral in the growth of SMEs across the region from varying industries, including franchising business transformation, branding, and intellectual property protection strategies. Sian and her fellow panelists will be addressing franchising outlook and opportunity in Singapore. Sian, over to you now.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, everyone at Constella for FLAsia 2022. And I'm so excited to be moderating this panel today. And welcome to Business Trends and Opportunities in Singapore. And Bobby has already introduced me. So I'm Sian Naidu. And I've been in this business of franchising for over 20 years. And our focus has always been to help growing franchisors develop sustainable quality franchise operations by leveraging the latest in trends. And for now, it's franchise management technology. And that's where we spend most of our time working with franchisors to grow their business in the region. So today I'm honored to be moderating a panel of very, very illustrious panelists who have either brought in international brands into Singapore successfully or have been extremely integral to the success of growing brands through master franchising in Singapore. So to begin, let me start by introducing my panelists today. And to help our audience have some context, panelists, how about when I introduce you, your name and who you represent. Will you please help me by introducing a little bit about what your role is in the company and what your business is about? Let us start with Lorraine Tay, who is the joint managing partner of Bird & Bird Singapore. Lorraine.
Thank you so much, Sian. Firstly, everybody, thank you for being here with us this afternoon. I'm very honored to be here. You know, as Sian said, I'm a lawyer. I'm an IP lawyer in Bird & Bird, and that's an international, we've got an international association of firms everywhere. And my passion really is in branding. And I've journeyed with a lot of franchisors, with a lot of businesses as they grow the business, not only in Singapore, but internationally. So I'm really excited to be able to share this afternoon with you here today. Thank you so much, Sian.
Thank you. And next is Andrea Bell, who is the co-founder and board director of Inspire Brands Asia, master franchisee for Anytime Fitness. Lorraine, Andrea.
Hi, thank you very much. Really appreciate being here today and being invited by Constella and FLA to speak again about franchising, something I'm quite passionate about. In my company, Inspire Brands Asia, I'm the co-founder and board member. So I am now focused on working on the business rather than in the business, which is a different perspective.
All right. And next we have another master franchisee. We have another brand from Presotia from Taiwan, and that's Doris Lin, the manager for overseas business development.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. Presotia is a Taiwan bubble tea brand. We have more than 400 stores over the world. I'm in charge of the overseas franchise business development of Presotia. Thank you.
And last but not least, we have Louis Jung, country manager of Dekyo iLevel Singapore. Louis? Louis? Did we lose you?
I'm very sorry, I was muted. Okay, thank you, Sian, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm the country manager of Dekyo iLevel Singapore. We are education franchising business. We are in Malaysia and Singapore as well. In Singapore only we have 26 centers in here. So I'm trying to be helpful for this seminar. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, panelists. And I'm sure everyone here is excited to hear from each and every one of you on your journeys and what you've learned and what are some of the opportunities and challenges you faced. So Singapore has long been known as the world's busiest port and top location for investments in the Asia-Pacific region. Factors such as strategic location, a competitive workforce, pro-business environment, and forward-looking economic policies have enabled Singapore to be the world's gateway to Asia. So many international brands have made Singapore their regional home, and we remain very open to inviting even more brands here. At the onset of 2022, the world started to emerge from the global pandemic, and at this moment, barring some countries, almost every country and every economy is eager to get on the route to recovery. However, this has not been a smooth ride, given the weak external factors that revolve around supply chain disruptions of global supply, critical elements like energy, food, and other commodities. Added to that, we also see quite a lot of inflation, and in some countries, it's at a multi-decade high. But of course, this is also a culmination of all the disruptions caused by a combination of the pandemic, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and of course, China's strict zero COVID lockdowns. So as a result, economic conditions seem a little bit volatile. But good news is, as mentioned by Darren earlier, for Singapore, we have announced that our GDP growth forecast remain pretty consistent, and it's likely to be maintained between 3% and 5% despite all the ongoing crisis brewing around Singapore. All in all, a lot of businesses have reported to me that, okay, the market is open. They do see 2022 as a transitional year to what's ahead. I don't know if all of you agree, panelists, but I'm going to ask you this as the first question. How do you panelists see 2022 panning out for your business? And maybe we'll start with Lorraine, because Lorraine, you talk to a lot of companies and business owners all the time. You probably also have a very good snapshot of how the sentiments are in the market. Would you care to share a little bit of how you see 2022 panning out?
Sure, thank you, Sian. As you rightly pointed out, I think there is a lot of, with every downturn, there's always going to be an upturn, right? And I think where we are right now, it has been a few years of uncertainty in the market. Some pockets are still ongoing, but I think Singapore remains as a very attractive proposition for brands and businesses coming into this part of the world. Because I think, Singapore offers something that is not easily replicated. We might be a tiny red dot, but then we have a very pro-business environment. The government works hand in hand together with all businesses to make sure that everybody tries to ride through the difficult times. The policies also facilitate businesses coming into Singapore. So really, I would see Singapore as a showcase, if you like, for the region, for people launching more internationally, because as you say, it's a destination hub. People go through Singapore, they all, there's a lot of visibility here. And so I think there's still going to be, with the robust legal framework that we have here, the government policies that facilitate growth here, there's still going to be a lot of that opportunity. And I think looking at it a little bit more, even more holistically, in terms of opportunities that the pandemic has thrown up, it's brought about a lot of change. We can't run away from that. And I think one good thing coming out of the pandemic is the fact that businesses were forced to pivot. And so businesses were all forced to look at where the weaknesses were in their ecosystem. And so this meant also that there was probably a faster rate of acceleration in terms of looking to improve how they enhance the consumer experience and what that meant in terms of digitizing, perhaps. And so the access as well of consumer reach, that has also improved. And so people started investing and innovating in technology. And I think that has been one good thing out of this pandemic, because in a sense, you had no choice. You either innovate or you get left behind. And I think with the infrastructure that we have in Singapore, its connectivity, the legal support mechanisms, right? The fact that it's transparent, the fact that there is good governance, the fact that it is stable, all of that sort of supports this whole ecosystem and allows provision of better consumer experience, better access, better efficiencies. And so I think there is going to be definitely a lot of an upside there.
Okay, that is a very upbeat look at 2022. Doris, for Presso Tea, how do you see 2022 for your business?
Okay, thank you. Presso Tea has already 2 stores in Singapore. The first one is started in the last December, and the second one, it will be open in this April. And for the strategy of the Singapore business is quite different from the other company, the other countries, because Singapore is it kind of representative country for the other Asias. So the strategy of the Singapore, we start for the master franchise, and the location will be quite different than the other countries. The first one, we start in the business center. This is quite small, and the rental is lower than the others. So we focus on the strategy for the business model, and also this is storage for the training center also for the future. And the second store, we start the store in the shopping mall, and it's more popular, and more people will go around there. So the sales revenue is higher than before, and we will start for the flag shop in this October, and we are very positive view on this Singapore market in the future.
So for Presso Tea, you don't see this as a transition, but rather an opportunity for growth this year, right?
Yes, correct.
Very interesting. And Louis, how about for Dekyo I level? Do you see it as a growth year rather than a transition year as well?
Okay, before I talk about our business, first of all, first and foremost, I'd like to appreciate government, Singapore government, to support us during our difficult time. Actually, I can say our Singapore government actually very smart and wise and flexible and adaptive all the different situation, and also it's kind of experimental. Yeah, so all the people over here look for government. We gotta trust for the government, and then yeah, I think the good job. I really did a good job. So based on this, last year during the pandemic period and this time, every business was affected, and we were. But however, we tried to be adaptive, and this year actually, for only half of the first year, we got a 6 new center open, and then I think after 12 years in Singapore, and especially for education business, we need a repetition. People has to trust us. So I believe that now people have more confidence in our brand. And as you know that Singapore is an educational hub as well, not only financial hub. So if there's anyone who are interested in education, Singapore is the perfect country. You have to start first because it is gonna be a benchmark over the world. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. That's very insightful. And it's a very encouraging factor for brands that are seeking to come into Singapore, that our government will actually reach out and be there for us, the business owners, to make it through even tough times. Andrea, could I have you share your view on 2022, please?
Sure, it'd be my pleasure. 2022 for us with Anytime Fitness, we are running across 9 markets in Asia, and by far Singapore is our strongest market. Not in terms of number of gyms, we've got more gyms in the Philippines, for instance, but the strength of the Singapore economy, even coming out of COVID, and to Louise's point, we'll be very lucky to be in Singapore with such an amazing government that managed to fund a considerable amount of the gym industry over the last few years. So we have come out doing very well, of course down over the last 2 years, but this year is already looking very positive. We're average 2 franchise sales per month already, and we've opened up 16 clubs across the region, and in Singapore we've also opened up 4. So we're doing very well in that regard, and so we're very excited about the remainder of 2022 and what will come. Singapore is extremely strong for us. We wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Wow, that's fantastic news for everyone listening, I'm sure. So I'm sure it's not all been a bed of roses. So maybe the next question we'd like to share with answers to with our audience is, what are some lessons or experiences or insights that you can share? I know that Louise has already said that, this Singapore is a good place to start your business and manage your business because we have a very caring environment for business owners. But what are some of the lessons, experiences, and insights you can share about running your franchise here in Singapore, either from a legal, economic, lifestyle perspective? Since I had you speaking already, Andrea, maybe you could continue.
Sure, happy to do that. You know what, starting from the very beginning, I started as a franchisee myself in Singapore, and I specifically came to Singapore to build Anytime Fitness gyms because of the strength of the economy, the laws, as Lorraine said, very clear structure for franchising, and for a new person coming into a country, it was very clear for me and made a lot of sense. So that was one of the major reasons why I chose Singapore over other markets. What I would have done better is having a really robust franchise management system, which we mentioned earlier. I think, Sian, you mentioned that. Having that in the very beginning, getting all your details and following the system to the T right from the very beginning, financials, legals, have all those done, don't put them aside, and it will make your journey as a franchisee so much easier and smoother, rather than sort of head down and selling product or servicing, whatever that is. That's all good. That will have to happen. But if you don't get that back end right, it becomes a bit of a challenge down the track. So start with the basics, get that right, and then all will be smooth sailing after that, hopefully.
Thank you. And Louis, do you share the same sentiments?
Yeah, so if you ask me why Singapore, why you have to come to Singapore, I got 3 points. First point is, as everybody know, legally, systematically, Singapore is a very transparent country. Yeah, and then of course we cannot mention that. Another good point is actually really safe country. Then another second point is there's a lot of capable people over here, so well educated, and their behavior is very fantastic. So if you come over here, you can set up very efficient organization. Yeah, and again, third point, if you want to go through the war, Singapore is the first country you have to think about it, because Singapore is very competitive, of course. But if you succeed in Singapore, it is a proven product for the war. So Singapore, you have to try and make it happen. Yeah. So thank you.
Wow, the Singapore Tourist Promotion Board must hire you. So, Doris, how about you? How has your experience been in Singapore, even though you've just set up not so long ago?
I agree with what Louis said. The Singapore success is mean you can be very successful in other country. For our Taiwan headquarters, we have definitely fully support for our franchise overseas. For example, in Singapore, we have the whole system of the SOP, and during the pandemic, many other franchise can go to training for Taiwan. So we set up the online video training. So even you don't come to Taiwan, you can do and learn how to prepare the bubble tea in your country. And we also support like the global marketing resource for the franchisee in the country, like the poster of the social media and the commercial video. And the other new projects, we have the very excellent ID team. So we announce the new product every quarter and every season. That means we have a very spatial selling point to the product than the other company. Yeah.
So it sounds like you leverage a lot of technology in your business, yeah?
Yes.
And Laureen, you must see quite a lot of brands coming into Singapore as well. Have you noticed or heard any of the similar experiences about brands setting up in Singapore?
Yeah, I think you know, there are a couple of lessons that brand owners and even just whether you're franchise or franchisee, it goes together, right? And I think I would sum it up in 2 big buckets in terms of learning lessons. Number one, know your legal rights. I mean, the contract is there, and because Singapore is in a sense, you don't have a lot of pre-disclosure agreements, you don't have a lot of these things, but your contract then becomes very important in terms of your obligations to each other. And if you want the franchise to work, really, you have to have a contract that supports each other, right? Especially when times are bad. And I think one of the big learning points is when the pandemic hit, a lot of people were looking to see, what are my obligations? Have I breached them? Was there an excuse that I could get out of because I could not pay my rent, because I could not meet my advertising dollar? What does this mean for me? Right? So knowing your legal rights, the force majeure clause, which everybody tends to gloss over in a contract, became really important, because everyone sort of said, oh, boilerplate clauses, it's all standard, you don't read it. But that's not true. So we found that in the pandemic, all these so-called boilerplate clauses have become important in terms of ascertaining whether or not this were triggered. So number one, are you allowed to excuse yourselves from breaches of the contract, right? If you are, what does that mean for you and for how long? And then does it also mean that after a certain time, if it goes on and on and on, do you have a right to terminate the contract? And so your termination clauses also become very important. Now, there are two ways at looking at it. One way is you say, okay, there's a force majeure clause and therefore everything collapses. We get out of the contract, or you dispute it. And if you're the franchisor and you say, I don't care, I'm not going to agree that this allowed you to excuse your rights, and therefore you continue to fight it out, then therefore you may be looking at litigation down the road. The second thing is you agree and you both walk away. The third thing, I suppose, is you say, well, yes, there is a force majeure. Let's see how we can remedy or change some of these things so that we all come out stronger. Because at the end of the day, it's a business that you both want to succeed, right? If the franchisee succeeds, franchisor benefits. And I think that fundamental principle is important. So that was the first sort of important lesson that I think people need to remember, that you need to know your legal rights first and then decide how you want to deal with it. And the second thing, which we found a lot of clients really benefiting, is have a task force to crisis manage. So franchisor, again, working with franchisee, really putting together a plan, right? To say, these are the issues here, what has been disrupted? Is it supply chain? So you're reviewing again your supply chain contracts, where you're getting your food produced from, where you're getting materials from. Is there an alternative source that the parties can come together and try and get economies of scale, or find an alternative supplier, and really working together and looking at all your third-party agreements and seeing how you're going to get out of this smoothly. The second, the last part on sort of this task force is really looking at your consumer base and how do you protect that consumer base and the goodwill, right? You want to make sure your consumers don't forget you. So if you're shutting down, people are not going through the malls, what does it mean? That means making your presence felt in different ways. So whether it's social media, whether it's online, people were pivoting to look at an alternative route of access. And I think these were two big lessons that a lot of, on the job sort of thing you're learning.
Right. So you've already sort of covered quite a lot of the legal considerations that franchisors need to think about when they are franchising, whether in Singapore or anywhere else, I guess. But specific to Singapore, especially with regards to trademark and patent registration, do you have any advice for brands that are looking at coming into Singapore?
From a legal, yeah. So from a legal perspective, the franchising framework in Singapore is pretty straightforward in the sense that, unlike Indonesia, unlike Korea, for example, you don't have a rigid disclosure sort of a system. However, having said that, because the franchise business really at the heart of it is the way of doing business. So it's your branding, number one. It is your access to proprietary systems, number two. So whether you've got technology, whether you've got an invention that somebody wants to use in the business, and really it is then your access to market, right? And all these things at the heart of it is IP assets, intellectual property. So it could be a trademark, as you rightly pointed out, it could be a patent, it could be know-how and confidential information. All of these things, because Singapore has a very good and robust IP framework, intellectual property framework. And the Singapore government, as Lewis has also said, and supports this very much. I think the one thing you need to look at is make sure you don't leave IP management to the end. As a franchisor coming into Singapore or anywhere else, you have to make sure that your core assets are protected before you allow someone to use it, right? So you want to make sure that an IP protection is not like registering a company. It's not sort of you go there 7 days later or 1 day on the spot, you get your company reserved. If you're doing a trademark, if you're doing a patent, you need to plan ahead. And Singapore is no different, right? So you need to make sure you're protected in Singapore because it affects your own liability. If you're going to give a warranty to say, you can use this freely and I allow you to use it, and I'm charging you a fee, you want to make sure that you're not going to get sued for using that right. And so I would say IP management is key to make sure that before you sign on the dotted line, you are comfortable with the rights you are giving out. You also monitor and control the rights you're giving out. So in your contract itself, you need to take into consideration what are the rights you're giving out and the extent of the rights you're giving out. So now that you've gone into the digital world, are you giving rights to also use it on e-commerce platforms? Are you also giving them rights to use it on social media platforms? Because these are, traditionally it was very easy. It's all print, it's all, markets are geographically cut out. But now with IP, and IP is in a sense borderless in a way, but yet territorially you need to protect it in each market. So when you're looking at IP management, it's a holistic holistic creature. Otherwise, you're going to get bitten somewhere along the line. And I think that is fundamentally something that needs to be looked at.
Okay, thank you very much, Laurie. I think I want to turn the question to the brand owners here. Andrea, how does Anytime Fitness manage the IP, or does that fall into the responsibility of the brand owner?
Yeah, so with Anytime Fitness, our head office is operated out of America. So they're the master franchisor. They set all the IP, trademarks, marks, or the rest of it from there. And they cover all the markets that we're in, which I think at last count 37 countries. So they do all that from the head office. Our responsibility then as the master franchisee is to help monitor that and make sure that, of course, our franchise agreements have all that in as well. So yeah, we would then have the legal liability between us and our franchisee. We have a legal liability to the master franchisor. So it's definitely a partnership, but us on the ground have to make sure that we're protected and the franchisees are doing the right thing as well. So.
Thank you. And Doris, is that the same for Presso Tea?
Yes, it's the same for Presso Tea. Unless Taiwan Tea have Presso Tea have a headquarters for register for all the trademark for the other countries, and we authorize to the trademark to our master franchise, and all the agreement and contracts are all by the legals.
And was this done a lot earlier, or is it when you decided to come to Singapore and the Asia Pacific region that you decided to start trademarking?
We do the trademark in the beginning before we start this business. Yeah.
Okay, that leaves Louis. Is that the same for Decure Eye Level? Did you also make sure that all the intellectual property was trademarked? I mean, as the brand owner, was it trademarked and looked after, all the IP elements looked after way ahead, or was it when you decided to come into the region?
Yeah, so frankly speaking, actually, we are the one of the subsidiary from Korea, our HQ in Korea. So we do have a strong team, a legal team in Korea. So they are managing, and from time to time they give us the reminder and things like that. So as Rowan said, either yourself, either you have a professional team to check it out. That's a very important point. But what we have to do as operating person, operating unity in Singapore regionally, we are the one who have to go through whether our trademark is misused or not. So we have to very closely talking to the team.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. So I've asked a couple of questions, and it's very interesting that everybody has answered from either legal perspective or from a economic opportunistic perspective. One thing I didn't hear much of about doing business in Singapore is the lifestyle perspective. It sounds like all of you come from a different home environment or country of origin. Could you share with the people who are interested in bringing their brands into Singapore, what doing business in Singapore is like? Maybe from you, Louis?
Well, talking about lifestyle in Singapore, right?
Yeah, from a lifestyle perspective, or like for instance, education-wise, are parents very excited about pushing their children to do more, and it's a priority, or you have a very simple lifestyle, you enjoy the accessibility of easy meals and good entertainment, so on and so forth.
All right. Actually, I came to Malaysia first 15 years ago, and then I was there and I transferred to Singapore here. So as some of you might know, Korean is one of the people who walk the most daily, I think 10 hours, 11 hours, something. So in Korea, people actually still this time also employee actually is not going home until their boss or superior go home first. But now when I come to Singapore, I realized for the first time, I thought something weird. Should I go first and things like that. Our staff also go home on time. But I realized that that is the balance between work and life. Yeah, I believe that. Yeah, so we work very hard during working hour, right? And then every Singaporean, there are a lot of facility for sports and recognition, whatever, right? Food, nice food, whatever. So we can be charged again before we back to work. So in terms of balance between life and work, again, Singapore is a good country, perfect country. Yeah.
Thank you. Doris, how about for you? You have adapted and acclimated well into Singapore's lifestyle?
When I first time to retrieve our Miss franchise in Singapore, she's very passionate person, and she's really love our brand. That's what we are looking for, the person who to be our Miss franchise. And she also has an experience about food and beverage. So we quite reach very faster and move on the next step. And she is very workaholic and but yeah, the balance with the family and her children. So she's doing very well. So I'm very impressed about the dealing with the contract before we sign the contract. He's very concerned about the legal way, and we negotiate a few months about our contract. So that's our expect for it.
We're back to legal.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Andrea, I know you've been here for forever, so perhaps you could share something encouraging about, you know, working from a from a brand owner perspective to a master franchisee perspective, and how you ended up being a, you know, running a business in Singapore.
Singapore. Yeah, sure. I have been here for nearly 9 years. And that means I've raised my children here. Basically, they think they're Singaporean. And we love it. So it's you know, it's just the lifestyle, the weather. I think a lot of people do find it really too hot, but I love the heat. So it works out really perfect for our family. And so having the kids here from such a young age, they're very, you know, they feel so safe. They can go out and travel around the country and stuff by themselves. The food, the fact that we're such a multicultural country, that's really such a beautiful thing to be exposed to so many different cultures and foods and religions. So that's, you know, amazing on the personal side of things. But with the business, running a business in Singapore, I can't imagine running one, you know, too many other places, although we are across Asia. Our head office and the company is based out of Singapore. It's just so much easier in Singapore than it is in the other markets, you know, and we're doing great in the other markets. It's just, it is much easier in Singapore, especially because of the legal system. Coming back to that again, it just makes things so simple when you just know how things are. The rules are very clear. And yeah, that's what makes the journey smooth compared to some of the other countries and stuff that we're in. So yes.
So there's beauty in predictability, huh?
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
all right. We have a question from the audience, from Miss Hannah Tran. She was asking about, you know, the IT technology that I heard quite a few of you mention. Do any of you have any IT technology to share that you're using in your franchise currently? Lorraine, maybe?
I don't have a franchise. I'm a law firm, but we use technology anyway. But I think where we have seen clients, maybe not personally on my own, but I think where clients are using technology will be also to drive electronic transactions. So if you're doing digital payment, if you're transacting orders, you know, you're changing your supply chain and you're loading apps. I think one of the big things, and you know, Singaporeans love the technology. right? Everyone walks around, or almost everyone has a phone, because they're all connected that way. And so I think when the pandemic hit and people could not go out, the phone and the way people access these products became really important. So we saw a lot of clients moving into the app space and developing within that app space, not just purchasing and ordering, but that became sort of an extension of a lifestyle as well. So it, for some in the hospitality sector, for example, or gyms, for example, you had an ecosystem being built around it. You could have ordering, you could buy things, you could book things, you could have a loyalty program and exchange it for rewards. You could have that whole ecosystem just supporting your business. And I think that is quite powerful.
Andrea, do you have a software that you could recommend to Hannah?
Well, our software tends to be specific for the fitness industry. And every industry will be different, but Hannah's question was specifically to F&B. There are definitely white label software programs out there. A lot of companies will customize for you depending on what you need. So it really just comes down to what you need your product to be, what your budget is, and how you need that back office system to work. And to Lorraine's point, what components do you need? Is it just going to be a CRM program, or is it going to be, financial? So there is a lot out there, and it just takes a lot of recommendations and going through and finding the company that's going to suit you and your scale plans.
So your system was customized, yes?
Yeah, so ours is customized, and so what our franchisor, they control what systems we use, but then they'll find a company that will work with them on development and customize, but it's not white labeled in that regard, but they will customize it. So yeah.
So is it the same for you, Doris? Do you use technology? Do you have a company to recommend?
Actually, we all the customized for the Singapore market. For our major franchise in Singapore, they use the post system. For they do the order, and they can be calculated the sales report every month, and how many cups a day, and what's the top sales, and you can add your need in the software system. Yes, all customized. Yeah.
All right. So Hannah, it sounds like most people have either are using off-the-shelf systems like POS systems to manage their front of house, and for fitness companies, they do. I mean, the larger ones actually do customize. Louis, what does your company do?
Education business is a little bit far from IT technology. However, our company have our in-house managing system and to provide the best service to students and our franchises. We do have our own ERP system, and then recently we launched the point system to the customer. So everything is actually in system, but the system was built in our HQ level. Yeah.
Okay, so again, it's customized and it's brand specific. Okay, so I was hoping that we could get some feedback that would give you a company that you could address, but Astream is actually in the business of providing franchise management software as well as front-end F&B software management systems. So Hannah, if you really do want to find out more, please do reach out, and we are really happy to walk you through what technology is available to you from a SaaS IT software perspective. All right, so I think we have really heard a lot of interesting views and very, very positive views from the panelists today. So I must say thank you very much. I've learned a lot about bringing new brands into Singapore. And what I must say is that I know Singapore is a really great country to work in, but hearing it from you was something else altogether. I found it so refreshing, and I'm sure it serves as very, very encouraging to the audience that we have today. Before I leave the audience, and say goodbye, I thought, because there's so much opportunity out there for international brands to plant their flags here in Singapore, I thought maybe we could do a wrap up by asking each of you to share one big takeaway for each of our attendees, and the best thing that you would like them to take away from today's session, and what would that be? And I'm going to do a round robin sort of situation, and I'm going to maybe start with Louis, and maybe you could share, and then I'll go on to each one of you and then wrap up. Okay, so Louis, what is one huge takeaway that you want the audience today to remember from your experience as a brand executor here in Singapore?
Okay, so even though I really appreciate environment and government, Singapore government that has done, and our colleague, but before you come to Singapore, one thing you have to remember: this country looks very perfect and great. It's indeed, right? But in order for you to succeed in Singapore, you have to remember Singapore is very competitive. Yeah. So the people you have to make the people line up in front of the shop, but behind the scene, actually there should be a lot of effort to make it happen and differentiate your brand and product from other brand and product as well. So please ready and prepare. Thank you.
Fantastic. Doris, what's your advice?
My advice for the audience, some of the audience maybe are looking for the brand, want to be the master franchise or franchisee. So I want to advise you, when you're looking for some franchise brand, you have to make sure he has a very strong headquarters and fully support to all your master franchise.
Yeah. Okay. And Andrea, what is one big takeaway for you? There's so many takeaways, right?
For maybe not something we talked about today, but it's so important that if you're a franchisee, to find a franchise system that you align with and that you're passionate with, and to Doris's point, one that has the support structure to ensure your success. You're taking their system and putting that into place, but they need to be able to support your growth as well. So find that company that has all that.
Okay. Lorraine.
Okay, I think for me, and of course I have to wear the legal hat. I think ultimately it is very important to do your homework so that you know before you sign on the dotted line, what is your business proposition? Ultimately, you need to know both parties, whether you're a franchisor or master franchisee. You need to know what you are allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. So if there are any areas that you're uncertain, I would suggest you bring it out rather than say, oh, maybe we can slide it in somewhere, because that is where the relationship starts to break down, because that's where later on you get mistrust happening, and when that happens, it's a slippery slope. So I think you starting off on a good foot is very important, and the documentation is there, but then there must be an alignment of the minds. And I think very often when we look at term sheets, there are a lot of things which people gloss over because they don't want to muddy the waters then. But then I think it's best to it's like dating, right? You throw out everything first until you know what you're signing up for. Then your relationship starts on a good footing. That's number one. Number two, I think you also need to know who you're getting in bed with. So do your homework, find out whether this partner, whether you're franchisee or franchisor, whether this partner you're partnering, to Andrea's point, right? Is this the right person, the right fit for you? Is there that good feeling and trust to begin with? Is it a reputable company to begin with? Because that will undermine or determine whether or not you are successful. So do your homework.
Okay, thank you. There is another question in the Q&A section, but we might be running out of time, and I think we will need to leave it to the organizer to send the question to all the panelists, and then we'll have them answer your questions directly. I hope that's okay with you. And with that, I'm sure everyone in attendance agrees that we have learned so much. And so all of you, I'm sure, will join me to thank our wonderful panelists for their very open and generous sharing. And with that, I pass the session back to our host to make the closing remarks.
Thank you, Sian. And of course, thank you to all the fellow panelists for the insightful sharing. Thank you also once again to all the distinguished speakers and as well as the attendees for your participation in these sessions. We hope that it has provided you with greater insights of the Singapore market and has enabled new opportunities for your businesses. So for more information, you can visit our website at www.franchiselicenseasia.com for more information. And alternatively, you can scan the QR code that will be appearing on the screen shortly after this our introductions to a one-on-one session with us. Thank you and speak to everyone soon.